What's the best way to petition for your spouse? Would it be through the adjustment of status process or through the consular process? Let's say, for example, that you are a US citizen and you have a fiance who's in the US on a tourist visa, and she was permitted 6 months to stay in the US on her I-94. On her tourist visa, she was given a 6-month duration of stay, so during her most recent entry, they said you could stay here for 180 days. And 90 days have passed now. And you guys are debating now, should we just get married now? You know, we're sick of being separated so much. What would our options be if we got married now? And you speak with an immigration attorney. What would that attorney say? Let me tell you what that attorney would say. So I would explain that there are two options. One option would be you can just get legally married now and apply for adjustment of status now. There are some pros and cons to that, but if you take everything, I think the pros outweigh the cons, especially when you consider the alternative option, which would be you file just an I-130 family petition for your spouse after you get married, and then she leaves the US and tries to consular process back into the US as a permanent resident. Now, any customs officer would tell you, we don't want you to adjust status after you enter the US as a tourist. But what really matters is that you had the intention of a non-immigrant at the moment you entered the US. So in this hypothetical, the fiance entered as a tourist with the intention to just visit her fiance. And then later changed her mind and decided, you know what, I no longer just want to visit, I want to now permanently reside here. So in this hypothetical, she did not enter with fraudulent intent. Fraudulent intent would be she entered with the secret intent to apply for permanent residence after she tells the customs officer that she's just coming here for leisure or just to visit the United States. Now, what are the pros and cons of each option? Well, there are several main benefits. First of all, the entire process is going to be faster than consular processing. Right now, I would estimate that the entire process will take less than a year before the immigrant spouse has her green card. Also, you guys get to live together the entire time. And after probably around 3 months, she will receive her work permit and will have legal employment authorization and a social security card that'll just allow you guys to really fully begin your lives together, get joint insurance, helps you get driver's licenses, helps you get a job, really start living your lives together much sooner. What are the downsides? Well, what many people think is a downside is that you'll be out of status, but actually as long as you file your adjustment of status application before your I-94 expires, before your current duration of stay expires, you won't be out of status. You'll be in a lawful status the entire time. In some theoretical situations, you can be placed in removal proceedings, especially when people enter on a visa waiver program, which only allows them to stay here for 90 days, not the full 180 days. That's beyond the scope of this video, but even in those situations, 99% of the time, I still would prefer doing adjustment of status versus consular processing. The major downside with doing the adjustment of status process is we don't actually know how long it will take, and well, that part's not different from consular processing, but the part that's different is you cannot travel in and out of the US freely with adjustment of status. We can apply for something called advanced parole, but I just did another video on how I don't recommend traveling with advanced parole. If you are denied re-entry, which is a very real possibility, even if you're granted advanced parole, the customs officer can deny your re-entry. If that happens, your tourist visa that you used to enter the US will be canceled. You won't be able to revisit on that. And the adjustment of status application process will be deemed abandoned. So you'll lose all your money and you'll have no legal way to re-enter the US. In some situations, we could still salvage it by transferring the I-130 that's pending to a consulate abroad. You leave, we go through the whole consular process there, but that's not ideal, and that's a messy situation to be in with an unknown delay. Like just transferring it alone can take a year or longer in some instances, and then you still have to go through the other steps of the consular process. So All things considered, I still prefer adjustment of status, but that's not always an option for people, especially people who can't remain in the US during that time or who have other obligations abroad. In those situations, we can talk more about the consular process. To consular process in this hypothetical scenario, right? So we're at day 90, you're trying to decide whether you want to adjust status or consular process, you guys get married. To consular process, the US citizen spouse would file just Form I-130, and in this scenario, I would file it electronically. You just Google USCIS I-130, the first link that pops up has a blue button on it that says File Online. You click that, create a USCIS account, and you file the I-130. If you need an attorney to do it for you, you could also reach out to me. My information's in the video description below to schedule consultations to talk about any of this, or if you need a lawyer to help you with it and you don't just want to consult, we could do that as well. So after you file the I-130, then it takes probably around like 12 to 18 months. I would say the average for a lot of my cases right now is around 13 months for that I-130 to get approved. After it gets approved, usually within 6 weeks, the case will get transferred to the National Visa Center, which has more fees, more paperwork. Notably, at this point, you would submit the affidavit of support and the US citizen sponsors finances showing that their tax return meets the minimum income requirements. And then eventually the National Visa Center will say your case is documentarily qualified, which means it looks good enough for us to transfer it to the consulate, which will take a deeper look and then schedule you for the interview. Most cases that are done properly are only at the National Visa Center for like 3 months or so, but these processing times can change. After the National Visa Center, the case gets transferred to the local consulate that's gonna interview that spouse. Once it gets to the consulate, it depends on the processing times. If the case is pending in India, for example, you could see it being delayed by 6 to 8 months waiting for an interview in Mumbai. If it's in Bangladesh, you could be seeing several years before your interview is scheduled. Processing times there are particularly brutal right now. But also, under the Trump administration, we are seeing a gutting of the resources of the Department of State. We're seeing consulates being shut down, having fewer staff working there. Processing times, they're just creeping up and up and up, and we won't know exactly how long these are gonna take. And this is along with the Trump administration's theme of just stopping all immigration to the US and doing everything within their power to slow down the legal immigration process as well, which is unfortunate. So given all of this uncertainty, which would you choose? Well, the one benefit of consular processing is that theoretically, you still have the ability to travel back and forth to the US. So let's go back to our initial example. So we are at day 90, you guys are about to get married, and then let's say you just file the I-130 to consular process in the future. After you file the I-130, even though you technically will still have a tourist visa, it's not gonna be auto-canceled like it would in the adjustment of status example. You can still technically travel back and forth as a tourist. However, every entry is going to subject you to an insane amount of scrutiny. The customs officer is going to be red flagged right away to indicate that you have a US citizen spouse and a family petition pending. And it's going to be your burden as the person who claims they're being a tourist coming for tourism to prove that you intend to just visit the United States and that you are going to leave. So in the past, I've seen people stopped in airports and told like, this is the last time we're gonna let you in unless you bring a ton of evidence next time that you're just coming to visit. And they don't have to give them that warning. Like my client got lucky with that warning. But the next time she came in, she brought her employment contract, proof that she has a residence in her home country, proof that she has financial obligations there, proof that she's taking care of her elderly parents, has a dog there, like all of this evidence that she needs to go back and she's just coming to visit. And in this example, you could also say, hey, by the way, I was already in the US when the I-130 was filed. If I wanted to adjust status, I could have done it last time I was here. But after I filed it, I left because I intend to consular process. But you should still bring a ton of evidence during every subsequent entry to prove that you're just coming to visit, and you can still be denied entry if the customs officer doesn't believe that you have non-immigrant intent during each visit. All right, guys, so in summary, My preference is always going to be adjustment of status. It's faster, the spouses get to live together, the immigrant spouse gets a work permit faster. The only major downside is that traveling is not going to be easy until you have the green card. Even if you get advanced parole, I don't recommend traveling because it's risky. If you have any specific questions or you want to take it deeper or further and talk to me about your specific situation, you could always schedule a consultation directly with me. My information to schedule a consultation is always in the video description below. If you're interested in learning more about family-based immigration, be sure to subscribe. I try to put out a couple videos each week, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.